and this here may be tough to you. Snack cake to me, yeah, more hostess. This been overdue forever. Asked me when it was dropping, said never. Should've made you cut the feta, but I designed it Freemason Margiela.
What's goody, Shellitronnn here, the most spoke, no joking. I'm back at again with a brand new video, and I'm gonna keep it a Bowberry biscuit. Some parts of this video may get a little bit confusing, especially when I have to talk about, like, you know, technical things or talking about what could happen, what might happen, and things that may, I guess, revolve around assumptions. But stick with me here. I'll try my best to explain it as I go along. This video is going to be basically, I guess, a part 2 to the video above my head right here, talking about what the Panthers should do in the draft and free agency, but with the added caveat of us actually knowing that we do have, for sure, another third-round pick this year in the draft. It's going to be pick 100, and we didn't get that pick via trade or anything. That pick is a compensatory pick from the NFL because we lost Andrew Norwell. But not just Andrew Norwell, we also lost Shellitronnn and Ed Dickson. And if you don't know, the way that these picks works is when a team loses a very high-value, high-priced, high-talented player in free agency, the NFL looks at the pieces and the players you lost, and they weigh that against the pieces and the players that you gained after those players left. So for us, like I said, we lost Andrew Norwell, Shellitronnn, and Ed Dickson, who had a pretty good season that year, actually. And what we got back was Dontari Poe and Ross Cockrell. One guy ended up getting injured very, very early in the training camp. And the other guy, Dontari Poe, I'm pretty sure I don't have to actually explain anything about that. I think we understand. We have an understanding of what happened there. Now, I'm not really sure what the weighting system is and what the formula is for, you know, figuring out, okay, this guy here was really good, they lost this player. But how do you weigh the impact of a guard, a defensive tackle, and a tight end against a corner and another defensive tackle? I mean, it's a little bit weird, but apparently there's a way to do it. And the highest pick you can get in this fashion is a third-round pick. Basically, if you lose a really, really good player and don't really get a return on your investment, like by a long shot, then you get a third-round pick. I'm not sure how those are ranked. Like, after you get to that point, like, different teams get different picks. Like, obviously, someone has to pick before you or after you. I'm not sure how those are picked up because we had, like, I think somewhere near the bottom of the third-round comp picks. Basically, what I want to go over here is talking about strategy and what the Panthers should do with these picks. There's a lot of ways you can go with this. I mean, the Panthers could go ahead and make no moves and say, okay, let's just go ahead and use all of our picks right here. Don't trade any of them. We have a first, a second, 2 thirds, a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth. We do not have a 7th. I think we gave up a 7th for Marshall Newhouse. I think he came from the Bills. But honestly, you're not going to find me really stressing out about, oh man, we don't have a 7th round pick. I'm not really getting too hyped over 7th round picks. I honestly, by that point, I really do not care. I mean, at that point, you're really just looking at, maybe we hit this, but if we don't, I mean, it doesn't honestly really matter at all. Most 7th round picks don't even make the roster. But getting back on track here, that actually is a pretty viable strategy to just say, you know what? Let's keep all of our picks. We need to find a lot of talent in the draft here this year. I mean, we could just go ahead and go straight through and just use our picks. I mean, having 2 thirds is not that bad. Honestly, if you use your first 2 picks the right way and work free agency the right way with the amount of money you'll have when all the players who you aren't going to be keeping this year, and their money comes off the cap and our cap space grows here in the next month or maybe like 3 weeks at this point, we really could just work the free agency market and then you say, okay, we can go ahead and just go all in the draft, use our 7 picks that we have right now. But there's other options for us as well. The team could decide to trade up or down in the draft, depending on what they do in free agency, or depending on what kind of talent at what kind of positions fall throughout the draft. I mean, we saw just last year, a lot of talent that was projected to be early in the first, or even just in the first in general, fell to the second. There were some players in the mid-third that were projected to go in the middle of the second. I mean, I think we saw for a fact, like early on in last year's draft, so many O-linemen. The shock on those NFL draft experts' face during the draft, it got to the point where they just stopped trying to defend their own predictions. And I mean, that's not even a knock on them because it's actually really hard to predict these kind of things and what teams really need and what teams are actually really, really looking for when you're on the outside looking in. Although I guess if your job title is draft expert, I mean, you would expect to get maybe the very first pick of the draft right, or I mean, have at least a 10% success rate there. It wasn't even that good, honestly, but I digress. Depending on what the needs are and the talent available, the team could decide to use one of those thirds to maybe trade up. I mean, maybe even trade both thirds for a very, very late second. I'm not really sure how I feel about that, but I don't know if I'd be all that surprised if I saw the team use our 2nd round pick and our later 3rd round pick to move up into the 2nd, maybe even the 1st or 2nd pick in the 2nd round and find some really big talent that might actually help us out a lot. The team could actually trade down. I mean, you can use one of those thirds to go down to the third and pick up another fourth. And there's always some pretty solid talent in the fourth round. Ian Thomas came out of the fourth round for us, and he did some very good work for us later on this season. I 100% still believe in Marquise Haynes, although we didn't really see much out of him this season. If we do go to a 4-3 attacking 3-4 kind of concept for defense, expect to see more of Marquise Haynes this upcoming season. I still am on that train. I have not changed my opinion on that. But there's actually a third option here, because for the most part, people are only talking about, acquiring players through the draft or free agency. But what about acquiring players through trade? I mean, this isn't exactly the craziest idea in the world here. I mean, going through the trades that went through just this past year in 2018 in the NFL, Clinton Dix was traded from the Packers to the Redskins for a 4th round pick this year. I mean, he kind of fell off in my opinion, and I don't really have that much faith in him, to be honest with you. And also, he was on an expiring contract, which probably also brought down the value of just what he could garner in a trade. He probably would have gone for maybe a third if he had more time in his contract, and if he was a little bit better. Let's be real about that. Dante Fowler went from the Jaguars to the Rams for a conditional 3rd round pick this season and a 5th round pick in 2020. That is great news for a team who's looking for a defensive end right now. Carlos Hyde went for a 5th round pick this season, and that's actually really interesting too, because, I mean, we do need a backup running back, and if all it takes is a 5th round pick to get a veteran guy who's not really looking for a ton of touches, who can come in and spell for Christian from time to time and take a little bit of the load off his back, I mean, that could be really, really beneficial. And I saw there was a Panthers writer who talked about Christian McCaffrey's touches, who put it in a very, very strange and borderline irrelevant context of talking about his touches in Norv's system, where you saw that literally every single running back in that system was from before like 2006. And the NFL has changed a lot since those days, so it was kind of strange to even mention that. I don't know why he didn't compare Christian's touches to, more recent stats from more recent running backs in the new NFL.
Hey, what's up? Shellitronnn from the future here. And I decided that if I was going to criticize what someone said, I should bring facts and counterpoints to the table. So here I am. I'll make this really quick. Basically what I'm referring to is something from the latest Grill Bill segment, where someone asked if Christian McCaffrey can handle a consecutive season with a similar workload as 2018. And Bill's response was, I think the workload stuff was blown out of proportion by folks focused on his snap counts. Sure, he was on the field for nearly every play, but he only touched the ball on 33.7%. I mean, come on, 1/3 of every single play. That's a lot. And he said, now let's look at some of the touch totals for some other running backs who played in Norv's offense. You can see the stats right here. It shows Ricky had 442, Emmett had 432, Ricky had 430 again. You see all these years, 03, 92, 02, 91, 01, 96, 07, 06, 95, 93. I mean, just about all but 2 of these came before the Patriots won their first Super Bowl of this new era. I mean, only 2 since 03, and Ricky was actually a freak. This dude was disgusting. I mean, it's kind of hard to really put him in the same kind of category. But I feel like a more appropriate stat here isn't talking about how the NFL was like 10, 15 plus years ago. I think it's more important and way more relevant by a long shot to compare Christian's touches to players in his own era. So I did some digging here, and over the last 5 years, meaning from 2018 to 2014, there was only one single season where Christian McCaffrey's 326 touches would not have been in the top 5 touches for running backs, and that was in 2006 when Le'Veon had 336. But I mean, over the last 5 years, that number of touches would have been top 5 every single year. I mean, I feel like it's kind of indisputable that Christian McCaffrey had a huge workload, and trying to downplay it is, first off, just kind of weird. Why would you even try to downplay it? We all understand that Christian had a huge workload this past season, especially when you consider that a lot of his catches were like behind the line of scrimmage, or like 2 or 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, so they're basically an extension of the run game. But arguing numbers isn't really the biggest point of this, but it just seems like it's a really weird thing to cherry pick an odd stat like running backs in Norv Turner's system, when that to me just seems like a very irrelevant point of reference to make. Like, why is that your point of reference? I don't understand that. I'd expect that kind of cherry picking from like a commenter on Reddit, or maybe even someone in the YouTube comments. I mean, at best it's very lazy T-ball level journalism, and at worst it's an intentional deflection of facts by bringing up irrelevant points of reference to purposefully confuse and distract the reader from actual meaningful statistics, like, I don't know, stats since the Tuck rule at least. I'm no expert writer, but when half your examples come from before 2000 and all but 2 of them are from 03 or older, I mean, it's a little bit weird. Trying to diffuse that with these irrelevant numbers is pointless to the point of like laughable, honestly, to me.
The point is, these draft picks have a lot of value to them, And there's a lot of things the team can really do with these draft picks, especially, I mean, having another third round pick is extremely important. I mean, if I was in charge and if I was a GM, I think my plan of action would be find out how much cap space we have after all the guys who won't be re-signing and guys who won't be on the team next year. After we get their money off the books, see how much money we have, try to offer that to a good, maybe not great, but a solid kind of guy on the edge there. I'm trying to sign him to maybe $7 or $8 million a year, maybe $25, $30 million, with only half of that actually being guaranteed. And then really trying to find out what we can do with these draft picks. I'm actually kind of partial to trading down in the draft. Use 2 of our first 3 picks for the offensive line and use 1 of our third round picks. I might actually say trade that 77th pick to go a little bit lower and then get another 4th round pick, go O-line, see what's available in the 2nd round. If there's not big talent that falls from like the free safety position or maybe even a nickel corner, which I'm not sure if I actually want to use a 2nd round pick on nickel corner. I'm honestly thinking first 2 rounds have to be O-line, especially if a team does not re-sign Darrell Williams. I have a video about that with my head right here. Check that out too, because I'm not 100% sure what the team should do about Darrell Williams. I mean, there's a lot of different factors here. Someone's going to pay him. That's just a fact. Some team in the NFL, some GM is going to pay him, but I would actually prefer him to come back on a team-friendly deal, you know, just to see if he's actually healthy for another year, and then we hand him the bag. I have no problem with that. But to get back on topic here, first 2 rounds, O-line, trade out of that 77th pick, go a little bit lower. That 3rd round pick really could turn into a decent receiver, maybe a safety. I mean, I am still going to say this. I think a guy 6'4", 6'5", at receiver is exactly what we need. I know everyone wants to see DJ Moore at the X, at the wide receiver 1 spot, but I think he works so much better at the Z or maybe even the Y, like in the slot. I think DJ Moore has a lot more value in the slot, and you don't have to be the guy who's at the far right end of the formation to be getting the bulk of the production and the targets at wide receiver. You can still have a huge impact from the slot. I mean, ask Jarvis Landry how that works out for him. The dude's a monster. I think DJ Moore can be even bigger and even better than Jarvis Landry. I think use that 3rd round pick on the best player available between a big 6'4", 6'5" receiver or a safety, maybe even a nickel corner. But in the 4th round, definitely pick up someone in the secondary. I don't care what it is if it's a nickel, if it's a safety. The team really needs to find some talent, and you can find some pretty solid talent back there. I mean, the safety market's been, you know, on the low for a while now. You could probably still pick up a pretty decent free safety in free agency. George Iloka is a name to look out for. I did a video on him last year, but I think I'll do another video on him for this season because I still do believe in George Iloka, and this man can have a big impact. Plus, he's like, what, 6'4", 6'5", maybe 6'3". He's a big guy out there at safety. And you know, if you watch my videos, man, you know I love me some tall safety, some tall defensive backs with some wingspan. And George Iloka is that guy. Maybe double down on the linebacker late in the 4th. After that, 5th round, 6th round, I don't really have much of an opinion. I mean, maybe we go backup quarterback. Maybe we try to find, you know, some depth in other places, maybe an interior lineman. But I mean, finding depth on the D-line and linebacker positions will be very, very pivotal, especially if you have a decent, this the workable, this is like maybe an above average secondary. But you already heard my opinion on this numerous times before. I want to know what your thoughts are on this. I want to know specifically what your plan would be. I'm talking about at least the first 5 rounds of the draft, what you would do in free agency, and what you would do if you were going to trade any of those picks. Would you trade up or down in the draft? If you were going to use those draft picks to trade for a player who's already on a team right now, who would you pick? And for this video, I'm really only interested in extensive answers here. I know we need an edge rusher. I know we need an O-lineman. I know we need maybe a backup running back. I understand it. Everyone knows that already. But the real question is, how would you handle the whole scope of acquiring new players and maybe even trading players that we already have? And one last thing to just keep in mind, when you're proposing a trade that our team should make, think about that trade as if the roles were reversed. And would you want our team to accept that kind of trade? I've been seeing a lot of people suggesting that we try to trade Matt Khalil. With what trade value? What team is going to pick up Matt Khalil? Why would they want Matt Khalil? Other than that, I want to hear all their answers in the comment section below. Also in the description below, I'll have links to the article showing our draft picks and how we got our 3rd round comp pick. I'll have a link to the site that shows all the trades that were made in the NFL in 2018. If you're feeling really generous, there's also a link in the description that shows a way to support this channel. Obviously, it's not required. Either way, I'm looking forward to reading all the comments and seeing where y'all's heads at. And you already know to do that like button.
Cheers to you, appreciate the chance. Being told y'all I been the man. Being told y'all I had the gift. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Real ones gonna recommend. Count this as another win.